Hello everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to episode number 65 of the Rambler Podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. Today we are thrilled to have Jim Kaveney on as a guest. Jim graduated from Cathedral Prep in 1992 and he was the youngest of 9 children, so he learned early on to balance work, life, family, and his faith. His quest for understanding and solace was profoundly shaped his personal and professional journey. With degrees in biology and organizational leadership, Jim has had over 20 years of experience in biotech, healthcare, and pharmaceuticals. He co-founded Alchemy Partners, a successful pharmaceutical training firm, later acquired by Eversana, where he served as VP of Training Solutions. As an AFib cardiac patient, Jim faced multiple procedures and a pacemaker implant in 2019. Despite these challenges, he managed and grew his company. In 2014, he launched Unlimited Heart Health and Wellness, merging his personal and professional passions to create a platform for AFib awareness and support. And just this past month, Jim released his memoir, Unlimited Heart, which chronicles his journey from a haunted boy to a man guided by his heart. He hopes to inspire others to find strength and resilience for turning one's pain into an ultimate purpose. What a cool story, Jim. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jimmy, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty neat, prep being the community it is. Your sister-in-law, Lisa, was the one who kind of sent me a note one day and said, hey, not sure if you're familiar with what Jim Kaveney is up to nowadays. He's an alum of the school. He's got a book coming out. He'd be a great person to come on the podcast. So she connected you and I together, and here we are.
Yeah, grateful for that.
Yeah, pretty neat. It's pretty cool. Obviously that was just a little brief blip of what we'll get into with this podcast conversation, but you've had some amazing experiences in your background since your time at Prep. I mean, congratulations and kudos to you on your career.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a fun journey. Not always a straight line, which is okay, but yeah, it's a journey unto itself.
That's right. And it's pretty neat. We're sitting here in my office, but it's the old headmaster's house. And when you walked in, we were just talking about, a little bit about your time at Prep, just reflecting on back then. And I always like to start the podcast off kind of talking about, your background at the school. We'll get into some of the things you've been on with your career and what you've been able to accomplish. Yeah. But can you even take us back to Jim from 13, 14 years old and the decision to come to Cathedral Prep and what that was like for you in deciding to come to school here?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no, it's so fun to be back on campus. And particularly, obviously, being in the headmaster's building, which is funny, as I said to you today, I didn't even know this was the headmaster's building. And I'd walked by it so many times, countless times between science wing and the auditorium, and I never knew really what this place was. But so my journey to Prep was a pretty straight one. I am the youngest of 9. There's 6 boys total in the Kaveney family, all of which came to Prep. Starting with my father in 1950. He was a graduate of Prep in 1950. So the tradition of coming here and bleeding orange and black was an easy one. So I went to St. Andrews and knew without question that this was where I was going to go to next.
Yeah. So it really was a family tradition, right, so to speak, that this is where the family goes to school.
Yeah, so the boys went to Prep and the girls went to the Villa.
Yeah.
So it was an easy split.
Might be putting you on the spot. Do you remember class years between your brothers? And you said your dad was 1950?
Yeah, my dad was 1950. So, oh gosh, my brother Brian is legitimately 10 years younger or older than me. So he was class of 82. My brother Bill would be class of 84. My brother Michael didn't actually ultimately graduate from Prep. He started here and left. And my brother Tommy, I think, would have been 80, and 79 was Jeffrey and Tommy in there somewhere. So yeah.
I'm sure a lot of the listeners are familiar with the Kaveneys then, right?
There's a lot of us. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of us. So.
And when you look back on those years, I mean, your time as a student at Prep and, just the stories that you cherish, the things you hold on to. I mean, what was it about Prep that was so special to you that you remember from those days?
I think the cool thing was just the general camaraderie of everybody. I mean, we all came across at the time there were so many different Catholic schools, feeding into Prep at the time. And it didn't really matter where you came from, whether it was St. Andrews, St. George's, St. John, St. James, Holy Rosary, whatever it was, you became a Prep guy.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. And so we were rivals when we were in grade school, and then now we're all teammates in high school. So those memories and the camaraderie that we felt and had was really special to me.
Yeah.
And just the just simple things. And my memories coming back to me where we used to do, I don't know if they still do it, we used to do a thing called buck. Do you know what that buck
I've heard
is?
of buck,
Okay.
but we did not do buck.
Oh my gosh. And so I'm looking at the telephone pole now in between here, and I'm like, I remember those days, like we got the biggest, strongest guys of the football team, and then we just racked everybody up. But just fun, silly guy things that you could do.
Yeah.
And you felt comfortable because people had your back, and you had fun with it. And we enjoyed learning, but we enjoyed having a lot of fun too.
Judge Trusilla told me all about buck.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the ones who told me about it, and I think one of the first times I remember hearing about it, maybe Father John Deddish too.
Oh yeah,
Another one.
Yeah.
Oh man, so funny. And when you look at times of prep, I mean, for me, same thing as you're saying. Just the camaraderie, right? It wasn't necessarily just one specific moment or instance, and I'm like, that's what made my prep experience so great. It was really that everyday brotherhood, just sharing those experiences together with your classmates and just doing life with them during those years, but also the academic excellence and athletic excellence, the expectations around what it meant to be a Rambler, really helped elevate me, and I'm sure you can say as well, to being the best you could be during those times where by the time you leave prep, you're prepared to go in whatever direction it is in your life. And, in kind of setting that up, how would you say that prep helped prepare you to go on and accomplish some of the things that you've been able to do today?
Yeah, I think, that you kind of subtly hinted to it too, is there are things that I would say, I wouldn't call them spiritual things, but there were just things that were on the periphery of your education that you didn't know were being happened to you. Right? And the shaping and the forming of discipline, ultimately, right? And I read something the other day which really struck me, and it says discipline equals freedom. And I never would have thought of prep back then with the strict discipline of, come October 1, you're wearing your sweater or your blazer, right? And if you got caught, you got a demerit, those types of things. You never think of those things, but it ultimately is discipline equals, freedom. And what does that ultimately mean? And it's the fact that the more disciplined you are in whatever it is that you do, then you are able to gain freedoms to be whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
And as I reflect on that now, it was that discipline, the hard work ethic that was required in order to meet the standards here is really what set me up for going to college. And I often sometimes felt that going to college was easy, because the rigor not that the rigor in college wasn't intense, but it was just like, oh, this is so much more relaxed, right, with the university level than what prep was. And so I think that's truly what is the preparatory part of Cathedral Prep.
Yeah. I love that quote, discipline equals freedom. And it almost sounds like, well, how does that work where discipline equals that? But the way you explained it, exactly right. You choosing, or maybe being a result of being in the right environment of Cathedral Prep to learn these disciplines, then become a disciplined person, helps prepare you for the next stages of your life, whether it's college and business ventures or employment beyond. I remember being at college my first year, and I didn't realize it, right, when you're at prep, and then you go in a different school, and there's different kids with different backgrounds, and they're so much further behind on just some basic things in my thought, but compared to what we did at prep, it was preparing me for the next level, to exactly that. So, I couldn't agree with you more, and it's great to hear that those experiences helped you in what you've been able to do, and excited to dive into this a little bit with you. It was cool reading your bio. You're a new author, and congratulations to you again on that. We'll get into the book a little bit later in this conversation as well. And I guess where I kind of want to start is, I'm always fascinated with people who have, biology, biotech as a background, and then go into business and do ventures like that. To me, I always saw it as something separate, but there's so many intersections I can see for people like yourself and where that comes together. What inspired you to pursue entrepreneurship, and how did you manage, I'm sure there was a lot of challenges while chasing your dreams as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. It's a good one. And it's, I didn't come rolling out of prep or even Mercyhurst University thinking I'm going to build a business. But I think I started to realize some things as I was going through my career journey, right? So I got a degree in biology. And it's funny, I often joke sometimes is that I probably could have gotten a degree in confusion. because like I didn't know really what I was going to do, and I changed my degree, I don't know, 100 times at Mercier's. But the point being is when I decided to get into biology education, because my mom was a school teacher, like I ruled out being a doctor, I ruled out being a physical therapist, I ruled out all those things. And I said, all right, I'll go and be a teacher, right? And then I went and I sat inside of a classroom and I saw that and I loved it. I loved the education portion of it. But for some reason, I physically felt and mentally felt trapped by the classroom walls. And I said, this isn't for me. Like I don't think I want to spend the next 20, 25 years teaching in a single, knowing that it didn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
I just felt like, I feel like there's something bigger for me to do.
Yeah.
And so and that's what I said, this is where I want to go. I want to get into, and at the time my brother Bill got into pharmaceuticals and biotech. And I watched what he was doing. And he was going to be a doctor, and he's far smarter than I am. And I saw how much fun he was having, educating and doing things for patients and all this stuff. And I said, that looks really cool. And I have a degree in biology and biology education. Why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And so I started down that road. And as I got into that and I started taking over more training roles, and so I was a national sales trainer for Bayer Corporation. And I love those roles, heading that out of Connecticut. But I started to build my own kind of way of teaching. And so as I grew up in the industry, then all of a sudden I went to a couple of small startups. And there were people that had 20 plus years of experience. And this time I only had 8 or 9 years of experience in the industry. And they said, the way you train is different and unique. You should start your own business. And at this point, I'm in my 30s now. And I'm like, what? Start my own business? I'm in my 30s. Like, no, I'm well beyond that time. My prime is gone. And they kept saying it. And then it kept seeping into my mind. I'm like, you know what? I do need to build something. And so, and I always wanted to build something, but I just wasn't sure what it was. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start my own training company. Let's see where this goes. Wow. And so that was. And also watching, like, so I'm blessed. So my brother Brian, he actually ran his own business when I was a little kid. He ran Kaveney Brothers Painting. And so I watched my brother Bill and Michael and Brian all go out and paint houses, and I saw that entrepreneurship side of things. Then I watched my brother Tommy build his own trucking business, for a wildly successful business. So, Tom sold his business and my brother Brian is still running his own thing. So watching that, it was like, I was like, oh, there's a little bit of freedom to that. But, running a business is not necessarily a freedom choice. It's a much more of a dedicated freedom choice. But so I watched that, and that was some cool inspiration for me too.
Yeah, it's funny to hear all these intersections kind of came together to these moments in your life where, right, it's you just kind of piece things together as you're going along your journey. Like how you said, the art of the confusion is something. If you could have majored in that would have been perfect, right?
Oh yeah.
But I think a lot of us can relate with that. I think some people go to colleges and they know exactly what they want to do, and God bless them. That wasn't me. I went in undecided, and it took me a few years to really figure out ultimately what I wanted to do. But it's neat to hear how even into your 30s, I'm sure there's people listening to the podcast now who are maybe in their 20s and are thinking, I need to have everything figured out and know exactly what my future is going to hold. Yeah,
no, not at all. And it wasn't until recently, and I was actually, preparing a little bit for this, and I'm talking this evening as well, and I stumbled upon an old commencement speech by Steve Jobs, and maybe you've seen this one about where he talks about the dots in your life.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so fascinating, because it's like, you never really look at like, oh, that was whether those dots are good, bad, or indifferent. Yeah. You have no idea what they mean for you in the future. And as Steve Jobs said, he's like, we don't connect dots moving forward, we connect dots in looking in rears. And so that's when, like, you make a bad choice or you make a great choice, and you never know what that adds up to until you're in a present moment, and you're like, well, that's the reason why that happened. Yep. I'm a faithful person, so I believe everything happens for a reason. It's like, okay, that's why I went through that. I was tested then, or I was given that sense of joy then, and this is what it adds up to. So it's so that the confusion thing, it's okay. It's all part of the journey. Right?
That's right.
And it's not being overly toxic positivity. Yeah. It's just saying this is life, man. I mean, we just have to embrace it and run with it.
Yeah, it's okay to not have it all figured out.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think it's preferred to do that.
I think if we act like we have it all figured out, we're just fooling ourselves.
100%. 100%.
It's pretty neat. Can you share with us a little bit? I'm sure a lot of listeners would love to hear some of the maybe things that were moments for you while starting your business that really helped kind of create what you were able to do in terms of success. And maybe you can even define that for us too. What does success mean to you And then looking back, right, kind of connecting those dots, what were some things in your journey of starting your business and growing it that really helped benefit, the long-term aspect of that?
Yeah. So I will quickly summarize it to, so we emphasize, and I talk an awful lot about this in the book. So growing up as the youngest of 9, my mom and my dad both came from, hard lives. They truly did. And obviously raising 9 kids is hard.
Yeah.
Right? But when we still refer to it to this day, the Kaveney work ethic. And so what is now known as grit, as defined by Angela Duckworth in her book, Grit, that's what the Kaveney work ethic is if you want something so bad, nobody's going to give it to you. So you've got to go out and get it and figure it out. And you strive for that. And so that was the Kaveney work ethic, which obviously was driving me because I had a mission. I knew exactly where I was going. But some of the things that also challenged me was what actually helped to catapult me. So within the first 9 months of my business partner, who I had at the time, who was still a very close friend of mine, he left. He decided, he's like, I can't deal with this. This is too much, too much struggle. And here, which was funny for me because here, my wife wasn't working. We moved from Connecticut to New Hampshire to raise our family, and she became a stay-at-home mom. And I decided to leave my full-time job. So we have 2 kids, no income. And my business partner had no kids, and his wife was gainfully employed. So I'm like, where's the stress? Where's the stress there, right?
Right.
And I'm like, but I got to keep striving. So he left. I redefined the business, which was great. So I redefined the business a little bit, and then we continued to struggle. And I'm not embarrassed to say this at all. In the first 18 months of existence, we made $13,000.
Wow.
I mean, raising a family, we made $13,000 gross.
Yeah.
And then I had to split half of that with my business partner when he left, right? So I was like, oh my gosh. But then another close friend of mine said to me, he's like, you need to read this book. And I said, well, what's the book? And he's like, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I'm sure everybody on the podcast has heard of it, but if you haven't, you need to read it because it's really defined as one of America's first self-help books.
Yeah.
And I ravenously destroyed this book. Like, I went through it and I said, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed. And for me, it was putting that target out and saying, this is where I need to go, and then establishing what those non-negotiables are every single day in order to get to that.
Yeah.
And that's where that whole concept, as I shared with you earlier, is discipline will equal freedom.
Yeah.
And it's the discipline to have those non-negotiables every day. Like, what am I going to do? Well, today I'm going to get up and guess what? I'm going to send out 10 emails, 10 phone calls, and I'm going to do something for my business to grow. It may not mean anything today, tomorrow, or Thursday, but in 6 months, sure will, right? Yeah. And that's where we were, and it was that discipline and that grit that I had that ultimately, and I remember it vividly. My wife said to me, would have been December of 2013. We're a few weeks before Christmas, and my wife comes into my office, and she's exceptionally supportive of the whole process, and she taps me on the shoulder, and she's like, I think your experiment's got about 6 more months, and we need to get to work. Like, we need health insurance.
Yeah.
And guess what? We're running out of savings and all these other things, right? And I said, we're good. Like, we're going to be fine. And then literally 2 days later, I get a phone call from a guy that I never met before, and he says, hey, I heard your name from somebody, and I guess you're good at oncology training. I need some help. Can you come and see me January 3rd? I'm like, I'll be there in a second.
Right.
And I'm like, Lise, we're going to be good. We're going to be good. And that was it. Literally, that was it. It was one phone call. And then we started off 2014, and it was off to the races.
Wow.
So
I have chills as you're telling that story because just so many different things I'm sure resonate with a lot of people and myself just about that story, to hear what you experienced in those 18 months. I mean, when you look back and you think of 18 months, it feels like a blink. But when you think to 18 months ahead of your life and just where that would be in terms of, what you're planning for that year and that month, it feels like a long time. And so when you're in that, I can imagine just, that feeling of, especially as a man, right, of, gosh, am I really doing the right thing for my family? All the questions you're probably asking yourself while having to keep your focus on moving forward and doing the things that you knew you had to do. It's a lot. And you were talking about Think and Grow Rich. That's one of the first really self-help success books I read as well, where it really just opened my mind to, holy cow, there is a lot more that I need to be doing to be intentionally focused and using my mind for creative problem solving. There's so many things in that book he goes into really good depth with that I would recommend for readers or listeners to pick up and read. Yeah. But yeah, that's just an amazing story. And like I said, just having chills as you're telling that to say that timeline. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny too with that book in general, right? There was another gentleman that just wrote the book, and I can't think of the author, but his book was very famous. Is Burn the Boats, and that was out. And he had posted something on LinkedIn probably about 2 months ago and said, "Hey, I've never read Think and Grow Rich, but what do you guys think about it? Everybody refers to it. What do you like about it?" And so I responded to him, and there's a specific passage in there, and I don't know it verbatim, but it basically says, when challenges become overly tough, most men quit. You can't quit.
Yeah.
And that was it, right? And so I think that was the thing that really, and you read the stories too. It's like 3 feet from the gold, right? It's like, oh my gosh, if I just put one more shovel in, I would have struck gold. And that's, for me, is like I can't stop right now because I think I'm there. I'm going to bust through. And the other thing, when I started the business, it was 2012. We were just coming out of the Great Recession. And it wasn't good. In life sciences, it was not good. Yeah. And I was battling against other people that had lost their jobs in the life science marketplace. And guess what they were doing? They all put up a shingle. And they all said, well, I'm in business. I'm a consultant too. And I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm like, but no, wait a minute. I know those guys and nothing against them or those gals. So I said, nothing against them. But the minute they get a full-time offer, they're done. Yeah. Like they're going back to work full-time. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not. That's the difference. And so I had to weed and fight through that battle too, because I lost a lot of business opportunities because they went with so-and-so for this reason and that reason. But yeah, grit and Kaveney work ethic is what got me to where I need to be.
Well, and I'm sure other listeners can resonate with this too. Hearing, you can feel your passion through your voice. You can hear this is real. You live this. This is what you experience. And it's no surprise to where you are today because you had that mentality and that focus and you didn't quit, right? It's actually funny that author made his book called Burn the Boats.
Burn the Boats.
Because in the book Think and Grow Rich, he talks about how they actually burned boats as part of one of the things he talked about not going back.
Can't go backwards.
There was the Persians. Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I thought. That's where the author was going with that. Yeah. He said, "I never read this." That's funny. So kind of getting a little bit specific here to kind of your background and what you went on to pursue. Talking about what inspired you to start Unlimited Heart. And how does that aim, kind of more specifically, to help cardiac patients become better and more informed about their conditions? So this is kind of a little bit more specific now to niche to what you're doing instead of some general topics. But can you share with us about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So and obviously a cacophony of events happened. So in August 2012, I started Alchemy Partners. But at the same time, I was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. So here I was at the ripe old age of 38, being diagnosed with a heart disease. And I'm like, holy cow, what's this all about? And my mortality now came full circle. I'm like, because at first, you're running shot, and you're like, I am invincible. Like, I can take on the world. Here I go, right? And then it's like, no, your heart's going to start to collapse on you. Like, this is the issue. So my entrepreneurship journey with Alchemy Partners and then my AFib journey are one and the same. And so I built that business for 8 years, and then ultimately was dealing with all my AFib situation. And so we ultimately sold Alchemy in 2020, and we went to work for Eversana. And so I knew when ultimately I was leaving Eversana that I needed to do something good, right? I just turned 50. And so my friends joked with me. They're like, all right, you're on the back nine of your life. Like, what good are you going to do now? And so for me, it's like I wanted to be able to take the pain and the challenges that I faced as a patient and turn that into something more purposeful. Yeah. And so the whole idea is, and I don't mean this in a cocky way, I'm a well-educated individual. I mean, I built a business around training people in life sciences. I should have been well-groomed and well-understood in my own disease state, and yet there was such ignorance on my part on how I could manage my own disease. Because maybe it's that whole patient, but also healthcare kind of provider, like you ignore that. It's like why you see nurses smoking cigarettes as they walk at the hospitals, right? And so so I'm like, I've got to do something, because I know if, as educated as I am, and I still struggled, people that are less educated, not in an ignorance perspective, but more on they just don't know where to get the information. They don't know how to build or make themselves better. And so the whole idea of Unlimited Heart Health and Wellness is to be able to build better people so we can build better patients. Because we think through cognitive behavioral therapy as well as exercise and diet and just pure education and understanding that they're going to get to understand themselves better and then become better patients, and then in the long run we'll hopefully have better outcomes from a healthcare perspective.
Yeah, it's that knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
And so if people are able to be informed about their conditions or things that they're going through, and to your point, it's not just ignorance or just lack of, motivation to learn. It's more so where do you turn to even get informed on some of this stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that's the platform that you're providing is resources and support for those people.
Yeah, that is our intent.
Yeah. And I like that little jab, back nine of your life now. Yeah, of course. That's all.
Hopefully it's a long back nine.
That's right. So for those who are dealing maybe with health challenges, whatever their condition might be, people listening to this episode, they're managing their career or family responsibilities, both, while also dealing with personal health challenges, whatever that might be. What advice do you have for people based on, your experience? Yeah,
I mean, and obviously the caveat is, everybody's pain is different and everybody's challenges are different. But when it comes to health, and my parents always just say to me, without your health, you are nothing, right? So that's a top priority. I mean, certainly make sure that you are in a position that you're not putting yourself at greater risk. So I guess that's my non-doctor kind of warning, like, please don't do anything that's going to hurt yourself. But in the same vein, it's also like, don't feel that should be a crutch. Like, I can't do the next thing because of X, right? And use it as from a perspective as I look at it. I used it to fuel my desire of where I wanted to go. I wasn't going to let it hold me back with building my business. I was actually going to let it, because I understood for myself, like, if I can strengthen my heart through my non-negotiables, and if I had my mind aligned the right way to drive the business, if those two are really connected, then there's really nothing I can't do. That's where the whole unlimited concept comes from. And so what I would just say to folks is, understand, again, back to knowledge, right? Understand exactly what's going on with you, understand what your limitations are, and then work up to those limitations and strengthen those, because it's, I don't want anybody ever to feel like, we were talking prior to the podcast, don't ever want people to feel like, I regret it, I should have done something.
Yeah.
You can. So just try it. Take that first step, right? And for instance, right, like there was a good friend of mine uses a phraseology around like taking that first next step to do something is the greatest stop in life is the start. It's like, how do I I want to do this, but my heart issues are that, well, just go try it. Like, just start, go do it, whatever that is. And so again, take care of yourself from a health perspective, but don't see that as a limitation. Of course, if you are riddled with cancer and you're immobile and all those other things, sure, there's those 100% restrictions.
Yeah.
But if it's not, and you can come out of it, do it. And this is just a little bit of a sidebar. But my very close neighbor, she's in her 60s, and she's been battling breast cancer for 10 to 15 years, and so she's been amazing. And she's unfortunately in hospice now. But even during her journey of that, she was an athletic director for a university up in New England, and she just kept working. And she's like, I can't let this define me, who I am. And I just watched her strength and power, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And she's like, I have to show to people like it's possible.
Yeah.
And not stubbornly and foolishly putting herself at risk, but it's like, I am better than this. Right. I won't give it enough power. And I think that's where you'd be surprised, like, how much power that you actually have in your mind to potentially overcome the challenges you have.
Yeah, it's not like she's ignoring the challenges that she's in or the state she's in. She's not 100%, but she's saying, what can I do today to move myself forward, to progress, and to be an example for others who might be dealing with something similar. Your message feels like it's very, very rooted in giving people hope, right? Yeah. Just transferring that confidence in someone to say, how influencing them to be confident that you can do something. Yeah. We went through all the legal stuff about saying, there could be risks or things that you need to be smart about here, but don't let that negative mindset creep in where you're thinking now you can't do anything. Yeah. Be positive, have hope, and know you can move forward.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and I was remiss early on, and like one of the key things in my life that's helped me to be successful is my faith. And that's the other thing I loved about prep was the religiosity around it.
Yeah.
And it's funny as I've looked at things, so Think and Grow Rich and all of these self-help books, and they're all out there, right? And they're great. but it's actually from the Bible that actually provides you a lot of that guidance as well. Like it started it started in the Old Testament.
That's the best self-help book there is.
I mean, it really is. And, I was just sharing this the other day with somebody. I'm like, listen, in the book of Matthew, it says, don't worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
It'll take care of itself. Just focus on today. Right. And it's not a toxic positivity thing either, but it's just like, oh my gosh, I've been given this gift. Like I am alive. I woke up this morning. What can I do that's beneficial for myself? What's beneficial for somebody else that I can do? Yep. And if we all have that attitude, then holy cow, I mean, this world would be an amazing place.
Yeah, that's actually probably a great place for us to start, is saying, let's pick up our Bibles. Let's read our Bibles. Let's find some verses that really resonate with us and read those daily. If you are somebody going through a challenge of health, mental wellness, whatever it is, find those Bible verses that you can really lean on for strength for your faith. Absolutely. When you look back on your journey and, what are some of the things that you consider your biggest achievements, right? And then kind of a secondary question to that is, so then looking back and seeing your biggest achievements, but then what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind as part of this experience? Yeah,
I mean, without doubt, my biggest achievements are my two boys, my son Marcus and my son Ian. And I think what I want my legacy to be is to be able to say that I shaped my boys into be great men. And so that's really all that matters to me is making them be good people in the world and do kind things. And then generally speaking, taking my kids out of it and just shaping and focusing on me is, I just want people to think that I genuinely have a big heart and I just want to help people.
Yeah.
And do good. That's it. And I often joke, when people ask, well, is Unlimited Heart Health and Wellness, is that a for-profit or a non-profit? And so I always say, well, it's a non-profit, right? And my joke is because I said Snoop Dogg is my business Sherpa, because Snoop has a saying that says the more paper you can stack, the more good you can do. And so it's like let's go stack some paper because there's a lot of ways to do some good in the world.
You did graduate from prep in '92, so we got to reference Snoop Dogg somewhere.
Without question, and he's so relevant even today. Right. Even more so than he was back then.
Probably, yeah, that's right. Even our students who might be listening to this episode at least would know who Snoop Dogg is.
Yeah.
No, that's great, and I don't mean to make light of what you're saying there with your legacy and everything.
Oh no, it's so true.
But absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. Just what your family obviously means to you, the good you can do in society, just being able to be remembered as somebody who made a mark, right? Made an impact in some way in somebody's life, which you're definitely doing, and kind of leads us on in talking about your book. Thank you so much for bringing me a copy of your book too.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. I'm excited to dive in, and I'll be shooting you a message here soon on some takeaways I get from it. But can you talk to us about your book? Talk to us about what motivated you to actually become an author and write a book. Obviously, you've talked a lot about, what you've started here as, like you jokingly said, nonprofit in terms of what you're doing good for. But how was the process of, I can only imagine, reflecting on your life, your health journey, and then having to convey that into a way that's meaningful and impactful for readers?
Yeah. So honestly, it started when I was at Alchemy Partners. We were a couple years into, like 2017, 2018, we started getting recognized by Inc. magazine, Inc. 5000. We were one of the fastest growing privately held companies in the United States, and we did that 3 years running. And so, invariably when you get on those lists, then people come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And so I was getting contacted by publishing firms saying, "Oh, you should write a book. You are a business genius." And I'm like, not so much. My wife and I were running the business at that point. And I said, no, we're just hard workers, and we're persevering to do, to build great things. And my story is not different than any other tens of thousands of small businesses that are out there struggling, try to do something good as well. So I said, it's going to be the same thing. There's nothing there. And so literally years went by. So the next year they called me back up again. "Are you ready to write your book yet?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." And then finally the third year rolled around, and at that point we were now acquired by Eversana, and this woman is now my friend. So this woman, Natasha, she calls me up. She was the salesperson for this publishing firm, and she's like, "Jim," she's like, "don't write a book unless you have a purpose." I said, "Great," right? Because right now I don't have a purpose. And she's like, "Well, then figure it out and then call me."
Yeah.
And so the book stuff went aside. I'm like, I'm not going to be an author. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so I was, again, reading another book. It was Getting to Neutral. It was written by a guy that I never met, but I had some business transactions with, named Trevor Moawad. And Trevor was the world's best mindset coach by Sports Illustrated. And I was reading his book, and I opened up his book with the intention, like, oh, I can't wait to read what this is all about, only to come to find out that it was all about his cancer journey and how he managed he had biliary cancer, and how he managed his cancer diagnosis with his mindset program. And I'm like, holy cow, this is fascinating. In the biliary cancer, which usually takes people within about 2 months, he lived for 2 years.
Wow.
And I was floored by it. And so I devoured the book, and I said, I figured it out. Like, I could rip out his entire, oncology journey, and I could push in my cardiac journey, and that would become the book, the purpose. And so that's when I said, I need to explain to people that aren't, because the things that I went through, and you'll read it in the book, the things I start from my early childhood. Again, those dots, those pieces and parts that you have no idea why you're going through them, and you persevere and you figure it out. Then it's not until later in life that I realized I went through those things for a reason.
Yeah.
And so, so at that point, it's like, all right, I got to write this book now because I have a purpose. Like, my purpose is going to be turning my pain into something.
Yeah.
And I called up Natasha and I said, here's my idea. And she's like, you hit it. Like, now you're ready to go. And then her phraseology is like, well, if you're going to launch a business, Unlimited Heart Health and Wellness, on top of it, she's like, you can't be an authority until you're an author. And I'm like, okay, good play of words there. Let's roll. And so I crafted it, and so I wrote it, and then I was blessed with a wonderful editor who was able to twist my words in a way that I never could have imagined to make this into one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Wow, what a cool story. And I can definitely understand the concept of writing a book can be such a big beast, but it seems like as soon as you had that reason why, right, to your point of reading your not friend, but somebody you'd done business with previously, Get Into Neutral, that book that really inspired you to be able to say, holy cow, I have a purpose now of why I want to write this book. And then what it's turned into today, it must feel like pretty surreal moments that when you look back even to say, look at what we've been able to do up to this point, and it's pretty cool. Like, I'm sitting here holding your book right now. Like, that's just so neat.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, and that was for anybody who wants to know, it was a 2-year journey, right? I mean, it takes a long time to do it.
Yeah.
And it's also a little gut punching at times because my editors because my father was a beautiful writer. And so I was blessed with his gift to write, and so I was blessed with his gift to write, and I do it slowly, and so that's not a way to write a book. And so my editor's like, just write, just let it go. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about even if the sentences are weird. And so I would get up every single day and I'd write 1,500 words a day, and that was it. So I wrote 95,000 words.
Wow. And
she cut out 35,000 of them. Oh, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. How do you not know that might not have been the most important part of the book? And she's like, don't worry about it because it's gone. Right? So it's like, all right, let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
And so it was fun.
That is funny. Well, it kind of goes back to those daily disciplines you've been talking about, how important it is for us to establish those, and whether it's business, health, writing a book. Jeff Olson is an author who wrote The Slight Edge. Yeah. That's a very important principle to just understand. I mean, with all these things you're talking about, those small daily disciplines, they add up over time to where there's a multiplication effect that kicks in, and now you really start to see those results. However, when you're standing on peg 1, trying to just get to number 2, that can seem like a monumentous task, but as you stack up those wins little by little, just a slight increase, then it starts to snowball into something big. Yeah. The title of your book starts to, suggest using pain as a catalyst for purpose. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you've done this in your own life too?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, it's, again, looking at what I was going through. So as you're sitting in that and you're going through the challenges, not at any one point did I start to think like, oh my gosh, my heart is literally pausing. Like I'm passing out on a regular basis. I need to do something good with this. Like that was not happening at those moments.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until then I sat back and reflected on it. It's like, okay, I went through that for some reason. So, and somebody shared with me the other day, they're like, listen, if you can't get out of something, then really get into it. And so like I knew, all right, I can't get out of my heart issues. I eventually will through procedures and things like that, but I need to dive into it a little bit more and then start to figure out like, how do I do something beneficial for other people that might be suffering from the same fate? So that was really the whole drive around the purpose point of it is like I wasn't given this pain for my own reasons. It's probably to potentially benefit somebody else.
Yeah.
So how do I do that? How do I help somebody in that case?
Yeah. So for readers who are going to listen to your book, and kind of shared, I'm sure, a bunch of these ideas already, but by the time a reader puts the book down, what are you hoping that they're going to take away from the book?
Yeah. So the feedback has been great, and I've been overwhelmed by it. And most people have been texting me or on the reviews on Amazon. So if people do buy the book and read a book, please review it on Amazon.
Yeah,
because that helps. But most of it's been inspirational. Like this book was inspirational, or I had no idea you were going through all these things at this time. How did you persevere, right? And so I think at the end of the day, it's like, again, everybody's journey, everybody's pain's a little bit different. But it's just about figuring out how to take that next best step and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Because you can be consumed by what you're going through, and it can. And trust me, there are days in which I'm fully consumed in it. And then it's like, this doesn't do me any good. How do I get out of it? Because I need to start living my life. Seize the day.
Yeah.
I need to start living, every day, because it is a gift. Because guess what? Tomorrow I might not be here.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, and this is my personality, is I don't want to wallow in self-pity.
Yeah.
I want to figure out, like, how can I enjoy things?
Yeah.
So that's what I hope people get out of it and say, all right, if this guy could go through this, I could do the same thing.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to reading the book, and I'm sure I'm going to read it and be so inspired. And I love reading because it expands your perspective on whether your personal life or things you might be going through at that specific time. Sometimes, you're going to learn a thing or two about something specific, like if you're reading a business or self-help book like that. But reading a book like this, I just feel like it's just going to elevate me to be more confident when facing challenges and whatnot. So I'm really looking forward to diving into it and being able to learn those sort of things.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it was funny too, because somebody once said to me, they're like, normal memoirs we read, and this is a memoir-y business book. They're like, normal memoir books are written by like 85, 90-year-old people that are about to kick the can, and they just want to say, here's my legacy, right? And it's very, very dry. And so a lot of folks are saying, well, when's book number 2 coming out? Like, we want to hear what's the continuing story. And so I think that's probably what will be the next thing, is like, all right, how did Unlimited Heart come out on the health and wellness side of it? How did that grow and hopefully maybe transform other people's lives? So this will probably continue, hopefully.
Where can people find the book?
You can find it any book retailer, Amazon, Target. Obviously, Amazon's preferred just because it's the largest bookseller in the world. I think about 40 to 60% of all books are sold through Amazon.
Wow.
12 million a day, which is fascinating. And I'm blessed. We actually did hit the number one ranking on Amazon books for heart disease books as well as for entrepreneurship.
Wow.
That lasted for probably about 24 to 48 hours, and then they sold another 12 million of somebody else's book. But it's great to hit that mark, and I'm just happy to share it with you.
What an incredible accolade. I know you kind of, joked off a little bit there to say it, but you were there. You were number 1 on that chart.
Oh, we took pictures of it, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We framed those on the wall. That's awesome.
We captured those moments.
Yeah, that is so cool, and what an accomplishment, absolutely. It makes you feel good about your book is getting out there to people, right? Yeah. It's being received well.
And one other thing too, which I want to say is because again, it's not about nobody makes money on selling books. But the whole idea around the book is, for every book that we do sell, I will be giving back proceeds to the Boys and Girls Club of Sohegan Valley, which is in New Hampshire. I sit on the board of directors, because our goal is, again, stacking paper. So if I can sell more books, then I can give more money to the Boys and Girls Club as proceeds from the books sales. Yeah.
Well, it's good to be inspired by Snoop Dogg as well, right?
It is, yeah. And I'm going to keep saying that, so maybe someday he's like, hey, let's get together, because he's a Steelers fan. And I'm a Steelers fan, so maybe we'll get together and go see a game or something.
Absolutely. Well, they're having a good run this year, so let's hope they keep that going. Yeah. Well, I got one more bonus question for you if you got time for us.
I do.
So this is a fun one. I ask all of our alumni who come on the podcast this question. But if you could go back in time and speak at your prep graduation, so imagine it's June 1992, you're the one up there talking to your class, but you're talking to your class knowing what you know now from your experiences in life. What would you say to them at that time?
Wow. Okay, it's good. Good question. So, well, I mean, I would say, don't give up, but also, I think you've probably heard this quote before too, where there's the phrase of knowledge is power.
Yeah.
But out of Napoleon Hill, I liked it the best is knowledge truly isn't power until it's focused. And so, and for me, coming out of my biology degree at Mercer, I wasn't focused. So it was just disparate information. But until I really focused it into building a business around my knowledge, that's when it became powerful. So I want people to say, hey, take what you know, and it doesn't have to be what prep told you. Maybe it's just general experience in life. Then focus it and do something with it, because that's when it really becomes powerful, and you can make a huge difference in people's lives.
And I think he says it's potential power.
Yeah.
Right? Knowledge is potential power until we put the focus and effort behind it to actually make it something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that would definitely resonate with people then, because it resonates with me now, and I'm sure our listeners as well, as we hear you say that. And from somebody who has had the background and experiences you've had, and the stories you're able to share with us today on the podcast, I know I'm excited about the reading the book and being able to learn more from that story, but also re-listening to this podcast episode, because you shared a lot of different things in your journey and things that you've been able to figure out that are beneficial to anybody listening to this, regardless of your career path and field. So, yeah, Jim, this has been great. I mean, I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
I know you had a short window that you were here going to be in town speaking at Mercier's tonight, and congrats on that invitation. What an honor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you making the time to come down to do the podcast episode. And we're going to hop over to Prep now, do a little tour of the school, show you some of the new things happening there. But no, I just want to thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And just if anybody out there in Prep alumni world that want to get involved and help out in some way, shape, or form, they know how to get a hold of me. Find me online. I'm all over the place. Just looking to find good people that are looking to make some differences.
Yep. And always feel free to even reach out to me, and I'll connect you with Jim as well if that's the case. So
that's great.
Absolutely.
Roll
Thanks
Ramblers.
again. Yep. Roll Ramblers. Thanks, Jim.
All right.